All right, let's talk about the Miami Hurricanes. Off-season of change is upon us. Of course, we know Cam Ward going to the National Football League. Thank you for your services, Cam. What a great quarterback during this run for the Miami Hurricanes, at least last season. Disappointing end, but obviously he was an outstanding player. But other big moves, I think really smart moves, are coming from the Miami Hurricanes leader, Coach Mario Cristobal. I think this is great news for Miami long term. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Miami was obviously a very fun and exciting team last season, but there was a clear and obvious flaw, right? The Hurricanes and their offense obviously was outstanding. Their defense was a dumpster fire. It was a disaster in terms of their production on the field. And Coach Cristobal has left no stone unturned trying to address it. But he didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's get in this story and we'll talk about it more on the other side. This is courtesy of Kane's Warning. Miami defensive line coach Jason Taylor is the only on-field staff member remaining from the 2024 defense. Defensive coordinator Lance Guidry was fired, and co-defensive line coach Joe Salava, quarterbacks coach Chevis Jackson, and linebackers coach Derek Nicholson left for other positions. Taylor began his collegiate career with Miami as a defensive analyst in 2022. After one season on the Miami staff, head coach Mario Cristobal promoted Taylor to co-defensive line coach with Salave in 2023. Taylor has become an elite recruiter. That's the important thing here, especially with Salave developing the Miami defensive lineman. Taylor was the lead recruiter for three 2025 Miami signees. The three 2025 signees Taylor is credited as being the lead recruiter for had an average rating of 90.45 in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Okay, so basically what happened here is kind of obvious. Cristobal looked at his defense and his defensive staff and said, "You guys stink. You're out of here." But there's one guy that stands out, and that is recruiter Jason Taylor. Don't want to let that guy go. Obviously, connections to Miami with the incredible career he had with the Dolphins. Phenomenal job in the recruiting department so far. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Love this move from Coach Cristobal. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this, but Miami fans, you first in the comment section below. What position group on this defense that you think Miami needs to improve the most going into 2025? A lot of holes, there's no doubt there. Interior defensive line, edge rusher, inside linebacker, corner, safety, slot corner, whatever it is. Give us the position group you think Miami needs to improve on the most on the defensive side of the football and put it in the comments section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of Miami?
Yeah, Nick, we talk about Miami Hurricanes, talk about recruiting last year. They did a fantastic job. We look at, who are the three best recruits Miami brought in last year? Justin Scott, Marquise Lightfoot, Armando Blunt. All defensive linemen, all recruited by Jason Taylor. We go to this year, look at 2025. Who are some of the best recruits, the top recruits so far? Hayden Lowe, an edge rusher, brought in by Jason Taylor. A guy in the top five. You look at Herbert Scroggins, another edge defender as well. Then another three-star defensive lineman brought in by Jason Taylor. This guy is bringing in top-tier defensive line talent to this team, and it is not even close. He is the best recruiter this team has. He's one of the best recruiters as far as the limited capacity that he's doing it in so far in all of the ACC, in all of college football. This guy is absolutely fantastic. So like you said, can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm glad Cristobal is being hypercritical here and looking at, okay, is there something everybody brings to the table? Absolutely something that Taylor brings to the table as far as recruiting goes. This guy is top notch. He is fantastic. And, what do you expect? We're talking about a Hall of Fame defensive lineman from the NFL coming in, telling these guys, hey, I can teach you my tips. I can teach you my tricks. This is going to be a team that we're all about the defensive line. You got to believe a guy like Taylor when he says that. So I think this is really good news, showing that Cristobal being hyper analytical, looking through what everybody brings to the table before, whether they leave, quote unquote, or they get fired. I think this is a great move, keeping Taylor, because this guy is so valuable to this team in the way that he recruits, bringing in some of their best players year after year in the short amount of time. Like they said, 2022 when he started with this team. I think he's only going to get better, and I think this was a fantastic move by Cristobal to keep him.
Yeah, you know me, Miles. I'm a big history buff, whether it's college or NFL, when it comes to this stuff. And if you look historically, this is not uncommon with great coaches. When Paul Bear Bryant went to first coach at Texas A&M, yes, he did coach at Texas A&M before going to Alabama. He famously got there, fired the entire staff except for one guy, a recruiter who knew the area of Texas, right? Because listen, I need a recruiter, right? I need a guy who can help bring in good players. Nick Saban many decades later, famously did the same thing when he went to Alabama. When he showed up in Tuscaloosa, he understood, listen, I need some recruiters here that have connections to the state of Alabama, especially these high schools. I don't have them yet. That's Nick Saban's mindset. So what did he do? He kept some of the recruiting staff on board, the guys with connections, to help him get some good players in the state of Alabama. This is what smart coaches do. They recognize, hey, listen, push comes to shove. I need a guy who can recruit. If an entire staff is not getting it done with X's and O's, motivating and developing players, get rid of them. But you still need to bring in a guy that can recruit and connect with players from a coaching perspective. And as much as we talk about on this channel how much college is becoming like the NFL game with the transfer portal, NIL, and all that kind of stuff, the reality is in the NFL, you have a front office, GM, those kind of players dealing with free agencies. In the college game, you have general managers, but a lot of it's assistant coaches. So when you have a player that wants to come to be recruited or come in via the transfer portal, there's usually an actual position coach that interacts with them, or at least an offensive or that side of the football, offensive or defensive coach. And so what that means is if you fire your entire staff and you don't have a recruiter, any potential guys that we're already talking to or bringing in or being recruited, they've lost that connection. They usually fall off the wayside. Keeping Taylor allows them to maintain those connections while also getting rid of all the bad coaches or the coaches that weren't a good fit. I'm sure they're fine coaches. It just didn't work in Miami. So it allows them to kind of accomplish two goals there. So it's a really smart move by Cristobal. We've seen this happen historically a couple of times, actually a number of times in the past. The famous examples are the ones I brought up. But I love coaches that use this strategy. It usually works out. But I got an interesting story out of the transfer portal that I want to hit on. It's a little bit of a segue here. Mice, I don't know if you heard about this, but the whole Xavier Lucas situation, the situation Miami transfer from Wisconsin, we may be seeing a seismic shift in the transfer portal. It's just something interesting to end on, where Lucas was a defensive back at Wisconsin. He entered in some funky revenue sharing kind of NIL deal. I don't know all the contractual specifics with Wisconsin. He wanted to transfer into the transfer portal. Wisconsin said, nah, not happening. And then Lucas and his attorney said, well, the transfer portal actually isn't a real thing. I can just leave Wisconsin, unenroll, and go to Miami, enroll, and just play football. And if they want to give me a scholarship at Miami, cool. And the lawyers, NCAA, Wisconsin, everyone's like, yeah, the transfer portal is not a real thing. It doesn't exist. So we're about to see a weird thing happen in college football. Now, it's kind of a weird example. Who knows how much that can spread out? But things are going to get very interesting in the college football landscape. This was kind of under the radar news. Obviously, it impacts Miami. But what we're seeing from Coach Cristobal, long story short, with how he's handling the situation with the defensive side, I think it's a great move for him. And I tell you what, folks, buckle up, because with this new ruling out of Wisconsin that affects Miami, this could have big impacts for the Hurricanes and the rest of college football. I think exciting times coming down from Miami right down the pipe.